Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to another Shenmue Dojo video. Going along controversial themes again today, I want to talk to you about Shenmue 4 and whether Shenmue 4 should end the series. Kaput, done, the game Shenmue 4 to end it. What are my thoughts about it? What are the community's thoughts about it? Let's explore this idea and see where it takes us. So, to summarise, we are in what I would call a very tricky position at the moment with Shenmue, in that Shenmue 3 was described as a core niche product by Embracer Group when they did their financials in 2020. It made money, but how much? How good were sales? We don't really know. As I said in a previous video, about 100k sales week one. I know since then it's been on, price has been reduced. It's been on sale everywhere. We had the Epic giveaway, so copies of Shenmue 3 are out there, of course. But how many of those are realistically going to translate into lots of sales to make money for publishers? That's the big question. So, quite simply, with this being a niche product, should Yu Suzuki cut the losses and end it with Shenmue 4? So we're going to look at the reasons why you might want to consider this idea and the reasons against it. So starting off with why it should end the series, and I can already hear the community in my head about this one a little bit, but just go with me here. So the biggest one, I guess, is closure. We've been waiting 20 odd years for the Shenmue saga to be finished. Obviously, we've had Shenmue 1, 2, and 3, and we know the story's going to move forward. But the biggest thing that I've seen knocking around recently in community is we want closure. We want the story to finish. So by ending it a fourth game, that is the obvious payoff. You get that closure. You get that ending. What do you sacrifice to that is a question I'm going to talk about in a minute. But that's the one element we can talk about. Then, how are we going to get to publishers? Well, what you could do, I guess, is market this, the big grand finale, the final game to finish the Shenmue series. Now, that could be appealing to a publisher who wants sort of a staple title, a flagship title, not necessarily going to sell a lot, but like a big sort of line in the sand job here. We finished the Shenmue series. That would sound really good, as long as it was done well. And sort of tied into that, it might be an easier sell because it's only one more game. They're not then having to negotiate a combined deal for Shenmue 4 and 5. And this comes on to my next point a little bit here. That if Shenmue 4, say it happens, theoretically doesn't do that well, doesn't make money, and we know Shenmue has struggled with profitability over the years, that then puts that fifth game arguably in more doubt than probably a Shenmue 3 would have been back in the day, because if Shenmue 4 doesn't, even if it reviews well, doesn't sell well, then you've just got further evidence against the cause of investing money in this franchise. Whereas if you cut your losses and finish it at 4, you can then go, boom, done, thank you very much. And then the franchise can sort of become a legacy franchise, or if people fancied it, they could look at rebooting it, whatever. But you run the risk of, if you need that fifth game, that you may not get it. And that could be a big problem for us as fans, because we don't get that closure. Yu Suzuki doesn't get that closure. That whole thing just doesn't ever get finished. You then look to the anime. Now, obviously, for argument's sake here, we're going to assume a season 2 randomly gets commissioned. But what this would allow a fourth game to finish it is the anime content wouldn't then go beyond it. It would finish it alongside it. Maybe fill in some gaps here or there. That would be really good. Obviously, it's neither here or there. Now, technically, you could also do this if you did look for a fifth game. You could commission a third season of the anime, but when we can't even get a second season at this point, that seems like a bloody pipe dream, doesn't it, really? So that could feed in potentially to something like this. And then, obviously, I'm speaking for Yu Suzuki here. I don't know what he's thinking about it or anything of the sort, but he could move on to other projects outside of Shenmue, branch out, do other things, because Shenmue, he is associated a lot with Shenmue. Obviously, Virtua Fighter is the other big one that he gets associated with, but he could sort of go, right, I finished that now, that part of my career is done. He could set off into the sunset and go do whatever he wants. I don't think he'd ever retire. He doesn't think he's the type, but he could go off and do other sorts of projects and look at other things that he may want to explore and do. He was big keen on VR, AI, etc. So that could be something he could go on. That's just a few points there of why it might want to end it. So why do we need more games? Now, this is, I'd love more games. That's my view on this. Now, let's go into it. Story content. is it rushed if you do this in a fourth game? When we think back to the chapter tiles here, and you've got 11 of these, we're probably around 5 or 6, probably nearer 5 if anything, in terms of the story content. So there is a ways to go. So to cover all that remaining content, and there's 11 chapter tiles here, you've potentially got to cram in 5 or 6 of these into one game. How will they do that without impacting the story too much, without a time skip? What will they lose? All those sorts of things may then lend itself to having a 5th game if you want to tell the story the way it could be, and that we get that proper fleshed out story content that I think we're all craving. It also then feeds into the locations we want to make. When you think like Luang, we haven't been there yet, and we haven't been to the Cliff Temple yet. Baisha as well. There's all these areas that are depicted and talked about that we haven't been to. Menkung is another one that just comes to mind right now. Will that get cut? Would it get messed around? Who knows? And then within that, you get further exploration of the characters. You can further their involvement. You can further the Chinese mythology stuff. You could really go into the magic of the mirrors and everything around it. And you have that space to allow that to breathe without it feeling cramped, without it feeling rushed. Obviously, there's the risk to that, as I've spoken about previously. It could also, and hear me out here, be a very good way to monetize fans. Now, you can do this in several ways. James and I have discussed doing episodic. So you basically break down Shenmue 4 and 5, or Shenmue 4, whatever, into episodes and hope they sell well enough, and then you monetize it that way. So Shenmue 4 could be broken down to 3 episodes, for example, and then you sell those at 25 quid a go. And actually, you sell Shenmue 4 for more money than you would do just for a standalone release. It does run the risk, as with wanting a 5th game, that they may not do well enough, but the overheads might be less. And once you've got that system in place, which you've got with Shenmue 3, you could hopefully churn these out fairly quickly. But also you could get collector's editions running, box sets, statues, all those things that could monetize the fan base well and build into that. You could make art book. Yeah, I could go on and on. I'm not going to. And then probably the most interesting factor in this, for me at least, is Josh from Limited Run Games, who I've had the privilege of interviewing and talking to. Sound guy, big Shenmue fan. He came out, I think it was last year at some point, and he was saying if the 4th game gets made, he was confident he could get people to fund the 5th. Say that's a done deal, or he's pretty damn confident, then there is that sort of thought process, I guess, where they can go, well, he said that we can get a 5th game out here. Let's just do Shenmue 4. Just get Shenmue 4 out the door, negotiate it, do it well, and then hammer it with that 5th game. Obviously, that does run the risk that if you can't get the funding, you end up in this quandary where you end up in some sort of cliffhanger or whatever, and we're no further forward. Or well, we are, but in terms of getting the thing finished, we're one game away. So it counterbalances it, and how that would play out, I don't know. But I'll dig the tweet out for everybody so they can see it. Another school of thought, which people may or may not like, but this comes back from the old days a little bit, is could the series be concluded elsewhere? Could the anime do it? Well, unlikely at this point, unless it gets commissioned for that 2nd season, which I hope it does. Hashtag Shenmue Anime 2 for those who want to campaign for it on the 4th of every month. And the other option is a manga or book, which I know was touted a lot back in the old days before Shenmue 3, and I've seen murmurings of it again around the internet to get that story finished. I can see where people are coming from because it would give closure, but personally, for me, it has to be game. If not game, anime. Book is like the absolute last resort. It could be done fairly cheaply, I would imagine, as long as they can flesh it out properly and get the writers to do it, but I want a game. And that's, I think most of the community, and I like to think I speak for most of the community on this point, that we want a game. So to sort of sum it up on where I'm leaning with this, it has to be games for me, but we need to be a little bit realistic here as well. And that's a really hard thing to balance here when we think Shenmue 4, 5 and all the story content that could potentially come out of this. When you talk Zimming, when you talk the Mystery of the Mirrors, you talk Shenhua's powers, you talk about the Cliff Temple, some of the stuff in the Project Berkeley thing like Rio hanging off the train, etc. that we haven't seen yet. What do we lose if that is only done in one game? do we lose too much of that core story that it feels rushed just to get the ending? Now, flip it, realism, profitability. Are we going to get publishers to want to do 2 games? And then you end up in this very sticky wicket, I guess. But ideally, straight up, I want another 2 games to finish. Shenmue 4, Shenmue 5. If it has to be 1 game, fine. But it needs to be done amazingly well and makes sense from a story perspective. Otherwise, I think it will leave a bit of a sour taste in people's mouths. And that's not what we want to end the franchise on. We want to end it on a really big high and sort of rest on it and go, we did it, guys. We finished it. And damn, wasn't that a damn good finish to get the end of this story. But guys, I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this now, because it is a controversial topic and I can see people being split down the middle with it. Where do you sit in this? What camp do you sit in? Should it just be 1 more game? Or should we have 2 more games to get this thing done? What do you think? Comment below. Happy to engage with whatever's there. It's just, like I say, all these videos, it's just my opinion on this thing. I'm not right, I'm not wrong. It's just me spouting at you, and either you agree or disagree with me. If you want that 4th game, and hopefully a 5th game, depending on where we go, hashtag let's get Shenmue 4. 4th of every month, guys. You need to be out there on Twitter, on social media, on the 4th of every month campaigning for this game, because we need to show that the audience is still there. So any prospective publisher can pick this up and go, that audience is passionate, they're there, there's enough of them, let's monetize this, let's get this going, and let's finish this thing if possible. But for now, guys, take care, have a good one, and I'll see you soon. All the best.